pause for a moment and consider this. Most of what you call your life is little more than a swirl of thoughts and emotions echoing within your own mind. The burning anxiety that steals your sleep, the memory that haunts your quiet hours, the endless chase for approval. None of it is the world itself. It is only the reflection in a mirror inside your mind that bends and distorts reality. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If you never learn to master that mirror, you will live and die bewildered, never touching the true life that was always waiting just behind its surface. The Stoics understood this profoundly. What tears you down is not life itself, but the story your mind tells you about it. And if you do not take command of that story, it will command you. If you feel the weight of this truth pressing in, do not turn away. Instead, let this moment be a declaration, a vow that you refuse to remain a prisoner of distorted reflections. Let it be the moment you choose the path of clarity, of strength, and of self-discovery. It is a strange feature of our existence, is it not? How two people can stand in the very same place, look upon the very same scene, and walk away with entirely different experiences. One feels joy, the other bitterness. One sees opportunity, the other only threat. The world outside has not changed. It is the mirror inside their minds that has bent what they see. And if we are honest, this happens to all of us, every single day. The question is not simply, what is out there, but rather, what is my mind showing me? Think of how a warped carnival mirror works. Stand before it, and your head becomes too large, your legs too short, your body strangely curved. The reflection is not reality. It is a distortion. Our minds do the same. Stress bends the mirror one way, ego bends it another. If you have wrapped your identity around being successful, then failure will not just sting. It will feel as though your very self has shattered. If you have convinced yourself you are unwanted, then even an act of kindness might look suspicious, as if it hides a secret motive. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This is the trap of the mirror. Our repeated thoughts stain its surface, and soon, everything we see carries that same shade. This is why two siblings can grow up in the same house with the same parents, yet remember their childhood in completely opposite ways. One recalls warmth, laughter, and support. The other remembers only criticism, distance, and pain. It isn't that one of them is lying. It is that each of their mirrors caught a different reflection, and over time, those reflections hardened into their personal truth. The Stoics saw this danger clearly. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He meant that the events of life are, in themselves, neutral. It is the mirror of your mind that gives them shape, color, and meaning. The problem is, most of us never question our mirror. We assume that what we see is the way things truly are, and so anxiety paints the future darker than it is. Nostalgia polishes the past, brighter than it ever was. Desire stretches our goals into exaggerated shapes, making us believe happiness lies only in that one achievement, that one possession. As Carl Jung wrote, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The mirror of the mind can keep you dreaming in a world of illusions unless you dare to look deeper, to see not just the reflection, but the one who stands behind it. Imagine you walk into a room, and 3 people stop talking the moment you enter. If your mirror is colored by insecurity, you will think, they were gossiping about me. If it is shaped by pride, you will think, they hold me in such high regard, they fell silent. But if your mirror is clear and calm, you might simply think, perhaps they were finishing a private conversation. The event never changed. Only your mirror did. This is why Seneca warned, We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The mind shows us a distorted version of events, and we end up fighting battles that never truly existed. So, what can we do? We can polish the mirror. When an old mirror gathers dust, it doesn't need to be thrown away. It simply needs to be cleaned. Likewise, the mind doesn't need to be broken, only disciplined. Polishing the mirror means slowing down before you react. It means noticing how your thoughts are bending what you see. When you feel anger rising, pause and ask yourself, is this anger coming from what actually happened, or from the story my mind is telling me about it? That simple step is like wiping away a smudge before you trust the reflection. As Aristotle said, the self-controlled person is free. The more you polish the mirror, the freer you become from the tyranny of distorted images. This is not a one-time act, but a daily practice. Just as a mirror gathers new dust, the mind gathers new stresses, judgments, and old habits. A few minutes of reflection each day can make all the difference. You might sit quietly in the morning and ask, what color are my thoughts today? What kind of world is my mirror reflecting back to me? This simple awareness begins to smooth out the distortions. And over time, something beautiful happens. The mirror begins to show you reality with less noise, less prejudice, and less fear. And yet, a mirror can only reflect what stands before it. It can never show you the one who is looking into it. This is where philosophy touches mystery. Plato described us as prisoners in a cave, mistaking shadows for reality. Our mental mirror, no matter how polished, still only reflects the shadows cast by our senses. The true journey, then, is not only to polish the mirror, but to one day slip behind it, to discover the silent, watching presence that is your true self. When you glimpse even a fragment of that truth, life is no longer a chain of random reflections. It becomes rooted, purposeful, and profoundly alive. So ask yourself today, are you living in the world of reflections, or are you polishing your way toward clarity? The world is out there, vast, rich, and vibrant, but what you truly experience is only as clear as the mirror inside you. Master that, and you master not just your mind, but your entire experience of life. This inner mirror is not unique to us. It is strange to consider how the same world can appear so profoundly different depending on the eyes that see it. A forest at sunset may seem peaceful to you, a portrait of beauty. But to a wolf, that same forest is merely the backdrop for a hunt. To a bird, it is a network of branches, a sanctuary in the sky. To a butterfly, it is a map of colors and trails of nectar. Nothing has changed in the forest itself. What has changed is the mirror through which it is seen. Consider the tiger. To a tiger, you are not a person with dreams, feelings, and memories. You are calories. You are energy. You are breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The tiger's mind, its mirror, has been shaped by eons of survival. Its lens is narrow but brutally effective. It reduces the world to food, territory, and instinct. The grasshopper lives in another reality entirely, its mirror tuned to vibrations in the ground, the scent of plants, the shadow of a predator. Both share the same earth, but they inhabit different worlds. Seneca observed that nature drives every animal to self-preservation, and that drive forges the filter through which each creature experiences life. This is where it becomes interesting. We humans have been given a wider mirror. Our minds are not bound only to food and shelter. We can reflect on art, love, beauty, and knowledge. We can even ask questions about the meaning of existence itself. This wider mirror gives us access to experiences no tiger or grasshopper could ever have. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Our thoughts, our judgments, the very shape of our mirror. These do not just reflect our reality, they create it. But here lies the danger. A mirror capable of reflecting more is also capable of distorting more. Prejudice, judgment, and rigid identities can shrink our wide human mirror until it is no better than the tiger's. When we cling too tightly to labels, race, politics, success, failure, we reduce our vast potential for understanding into a narrow slit, showing us only those fragments of life that confirm what we already believe. We no longer see the world as it is. We see only what fits the story we have told ourselves. Epictetus warned against this blindness when he said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Those opinions fog the mirror, and soon we mistake the distortion for the truth. Think of how quickly judgment can warp perception. A stranger cuts you off in traffic. Your mirror instantly reflects anger. He disrespected me. He thinks his time is more valuable. Another person, with a calmer mirror, might think, perhaps he's rushing to the hospital. The event was the same. The reflection was entirely different. As Carl Jung noted, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In other words, the distortion you see is often your own projection. We like to believe our human mirror is inherently clearer than that of other creatures. But is it? Often our so-called intelligence just makes the distortions more complicated. Animals live with simple mirrors: survival, instinct. We add layers of status, ego, ideology, regret for the past, and fear of the future. And the more layers we add, the harder it becomes to see clearly. This is the gift of being human, not merely to see the world, but to choose how we see it. And mastering that choice is the first step toward mastering the mind itself. Yet there is a sobering reality we must face. The majority of people reach the end of their lives unprepared, unsettled, and bewildered. Not because death itself is a shock, it is the only guarantee we have ever had, but because of a haunting realization that arrives too late. They never truly lived. They mistook the noise in their heads for life itself, and when the final curtain falls, they see they never once stepped onto the real stage. How much of your day is spent actually experiencing what is in front of you, versus how much is spent worrying, replaying old arguments, or rehearsing future scenarios that may never happen? For many, life passes as if they are sitting in a dark room, watching reflections flicker on a screen, never noticing the vibrant world waiting just outside. As Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." We chase distractions and drown ourselves in noise, all to avoid the quiet truth of our own being. But in avoiding ourselves, we miss life itself. The Stoics constantly warned against this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He was not being morbid. He was being urgent. He knew that the trap of someday, the assumption of endless time, is what blinds us. People plan to live later, after the promotion, after the children are grown, after retirement. But later rarely comes as planned. And so when death arrives, confusion rushes in, because the mind realizes it spent decades being busy, but never being alive. This bewilderment is not simply fear of the unknown. It is the disorientation of never having been fully present. Seneca described it perfectly. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Time was never the issue. Attention was. Instead of living, most people rehearse life in their heads. The final moment comes as a rude awakening from a long, restless dream. Imagine spending your whole life climbing a ladder, only to realize on your last day that it was leaning against the wrong wall. This is what happens when you let your mind's mirror dictate your life. You chase its reflections: money, reputation, recognition. believing they are life itself. Yet at the end, none of them go with you. All that remains is the quiet, hollow realization that you never looked behind the mirror to see who you truly were. But you do not have to wait until your last breath. You can turn the mirror around now. You can question your reflections today. Ask yourself, am I living in my thoughts, or am I touching reality? When I spend hours scrolling, stressing, or arguing in my head, am I truly living, or am I lost among the shadows? To master your mind is not about controlling every thought. It is about waking up. It is about noticing when you are lost in reflection and daring to step into the raw, unfiltered present. Start with small awakenings. While waiting in line, pay attention to your breath instead of your phone. At dinner, actually taste your food instead of eating while your mind is somewhere else. When anger rises, pause long enough to ask, is this reality, or is this my mirror bending the truth? These tiny acts of presence add up. They begin to train the mind to reflect more clearly, to stop clouding your life with distortion. Here is the paradox. The more you try to ignore death, the more bewildered you will be when it arrives. But the more you accept its reality, as the Stoics did, the more intensely alive you become. By acknowledging it now, you sharpen your focus. You realize that each ordinary moment is, in fact, extraordinary, precisely because it will never return. The reason most people die bewildered is simple. They spent their lives trying to escape discomfort, chasing illusions, and running from silence. But you can choose differently. You can choose presence. You can look behind the mirror and meet the one who has been there all along. If you live this way, death will not arrive as a bewildering stranger, but as an old companion. And you will meet it not with confusion but with clarity, and perhaps even gratitude. The choice is in your hands now. Will you keep chasing shadows, or will you turn around and live in the light? When the mirror of the mind is clear, you begin to respond to life instead of blindly reacting to your own murky reflections. But there is another layer to this. When the mind is dusty, even your most beautiful moments are dulled. Imagine yourself at a wonderful dinner, surrounded by people who cherish you. Yet, a single stressful thought, an email you forgot to answer, a bill you need to pay, can hijack your mind. The joy is right there, in front of you, but you cannot taste it, cannot feel it, because the mirror is not clear. As Seneca once wrote, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Polishing the mirror is how you train yourself to do exactly that. This isn't about emptying the mind forever or living without thought. That is impossible. The mirror will always reflect. What matters is how clearly it does so. Just as you wouldn't expect a polished mirror to stay spotless, you cannot expect your mind to remain perfectly calm. Dust will always return, through stress, habit, or circumstance. But with regular polishing, you ensure the dust never blinds you. It becomes maintenance, not a miracle. So, how do you build this habit? You start small. 2 minutes in the morning, as we've said, is powerful, but you can polish the mirror at any time. Waiting in traffic? Instead of cursing the delay, simply breathe. Notice how your impatience rises and then falls. Standing in line. Instead of scrolling through your phone, watch your thoughts. Ask yourself, what story is my mind spinning right now? This very question begins the polishing, because it shifts you from being lost in the dust to observing it. And here is the paradox. The more you polish, the less you need to control everything. Life will not suddenly become perfect, but it will appear clearer, sharper, truer. A fight with your partner will not spiral into a catastrophe inside your head. A bad day at work will not become a story of your destined failure. You will see things as they are, sometimes challenging, sometimes beautiful, but always real. The Stoics lived this way, practicing daily to keep the mirror of their minds clean, so they could meet life directly, not through a veil of distortion. Think of how this would change your life. Instead of being tossed about by every wave of emotion, you would feel a steadiness, a quiet strength. Instead of wasting energy fighting shadows, you would move with clarity. And when challenges arrived, as they always do, you would meet them with a mind clear enough to see not just the problem, but the opportunity within it. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." With a polished mirror, obstacles do not just block you, they guide you. The choice, then, is simple. You can keep staring at life through a dusty mirror, mistaking smudges for truth. Or you can begin polishing, even for a few minutes each day, and discover what has been hidden all along, the vivid, unfiltered reality of your own existence. And when you live this way, death itself will not find you bewildered, for you will have truly lived, not in distortion, but in clarity. The geometry of focus. Have you ever noticed how sharp your mind can be in a dream? In sleep, you can conjure faces, landscapes, and entire conversations with vivid detail. But when you awaken, try to picture that same scene, and it slips away, blurry and fragmented. Is it not strange that your imagination can work better while you are unconscious than when you are fully awake? This reveals something profound. Our minds are powerful, but we do not train them. And just as an untrained body grows weak, an unfocused mind grows dull. Focus is not something that simply appears, it is something you build. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But what is the quality of a thought if your mind cannot hold it steady? Most of us live with a mind that jumps about like a restless child, unable to sit still long enough to truly see. To cultivate focus, then, is to teach that child to sit calmly and observe, to pay attention not merely in passing, but with full presence. Here is a simple practice that demonstrates how this works. Take an ordinary object, your coffee cup, a chair in the corner, even your own hand. Instead of seeing it vaguely, try breaking it down into shapes. See the curve of the handle as a circle, the flat bottom as a square, the slope of your fingers as triangles. This exercise may sound trivial, but it strengthens something essential, your ability to hold form in the mind. Every time you notice a new shape, you stretch your attention. Every time you resist the urge to drift away, you sharpen your inner vision. Why is this so powerful? Because attention is a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more strength it brings to every area of your life. As Epictetus reminded his students, no great thing is created suddenly. Focus is no different. If you cannot focus on something as simple as the shapes within a coffee cup, how can you expect to hold steady in moments of stress, conflict, or profound decision-making? The small training prepares you for the larger challenges. Think of it as mental geometry. A body can be broken down into lines, angles, and structures. The more precisely you can notice these forms, the more vividly you can imagine them, and the more resilient your mind becomes. It is like learning to see life in high definition instead of settling for a blurred picture. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Geometric focus is a way of awakening. It teaches you not to drift passively, but to engage the inner eye, to see with deliberate clarity. Let us be honest, most of us are training the opposite habit. We scroll endlessly, we multitask, we check notifications every 2 minutes. This does not just scatter our attention, it fractures it. Over time, the mind loses its sharpness. You try to read a book and after 2 pages you are restless. You try to meditate and you are already itching to check your phone. The mirror of your mind has become clouded, not by dust, but by constant distraction. Seneca warned of this centuries ago. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When your mind is pulled in every direction, you stand firmly in none. Focus rescues you from that fragmentation. Here is another way to see it. Geometry is the most stable form of order. The triangle, for instance, is known as the most stable structure in nature. It holds weight without collapsing. Training your mind to break reality into shapes is not just a mental game, it is symbolic. You are teaching your thoughts to take on structure, to stop collapsing under pressure. As Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Focus is a habit, built by small, repeated acts of noticing, holding, and returning your attention. What happens if you persist? You begin to notice an incredible shift. When you imagine someone's face, it becomes clearer. When you visualize a goal, it feels more tangible. When you sit in silence, your thoughts stop scattering so wildly and begin to take form. In dreams, this clarity comes naturally. Awake, it must be trained. And when it is, you gain something rare in today's world, a mind that sees without distortion. But let us not confuse this with control for the sake of control. The point is not to dominate every thought or force your imagination into rigid shapes. The point is to give your mind the discipline it needs to serve you, instead of ruling you. Consider what that means for your life. If your focus is sharp, arguments do not derail you as easily. Temptations lose some of their power. Creativity flows with greater depth. Even ordinary tasks, listening to a loved one, reading a book, cooking a meal, become richer because you are truly there. Without focus, you are half alive, drifting between images in your mind. With focus, you are present, alive, awake. The invitation, then, is simple. Start small. Pick one object today and break it down into its shapes. Tomorrow, pick another. Over time, you will find that this geometric practice does not just make your imagination sharper, it makes your entire life sharper. The more clearly you can see, the more deeply you can live. And in the end, is that not the goal? To awaken from the blur, to step out of the dream, and to meet life in its full radiant clarity. From reflection to reality. It is easy to mistake the images in our minds for reality itself. We wake up thinking about yesterday's mistakes, replaying conversations, imagining how others see us. We then rush through the day, already weighed down by stories that exist only in thought. The strange part is this. The world outside has not even spoken, yet our minds are already busy narrating. It is like watching a movie where the screen never turns off. But here's the problem. When you only watch the reflections on that screen, nothing in your life actually changes. You remain caught in loops of thought, reacting instead of living. Most people live inside these reflections without ever realizing it. They blame fate, luck, or the world for their struggles, never seeing that the real issue lies in the mirror of the mind. And so they remain stuck, surviving, but never fully alive. The Stoics saw this with piercing clarity. Epictetus taught, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Is that not the truth? How often have we spent hours dreading something, only to discover it was not nearly as bad as we imagined? The suffering was in the reflection, not in the reality. When we confuse the two, life feels heavier than it truly is. Think of it like standing by a lake. When the water is still, you can see a perfect reflection of the trees, the sky, the clouds. But if the surface is constantly stirred by wind or waves, the reflection becomes a distorted, chaotic blur. The lake is still the lake, but you can no longer see clearly through it. Our minds work in the same way. Thoughts, fears, and desires stir the surface, turning reflection into confusion. But if you allow the water to settle, suddenly the lake reveals both its surface beauty and its hidden depths. The same is true for your mind. When you step behind the mirror, you do not just watch the ripples, you touch the depth of being itself. Seneca once said, "Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future." This is precisely what happens when you live in reflection. You are trapped between what is already gone and what has not yet arrived. The present moment, the only place where life actually happens, is lost. But when you slip behind the mirror, you find the present again. You begin to live not in shadows, but in reality itself. Let us make this practical. Imagine you are in a heated argument. Your mind throws up reflections. "They're attacking me. I need to defend myself. I cannot lose this." These reflections spark emotion. Emotion sparks reaction. Soon you are both trapped in a storm of distortion. But if you can step behind the mirror, you can pause. You can notice, these are just reflections, not the truth. In that pause, something changes. You are no longer reacting blindly. You are choosing. That is the difference between being controlled by your mind and directing it. Plato's allegory of the cave is a powerful reminder. He described people chained in a cave, watching shadows on a wall, mistaking them for reality. But when one person breaks free and turns around, he sees the fire, the light, the real source of the images. Life in reflection is like living in that cave, mistaking shadows for truth. To step behind the mirror is to turn around and see life as it really is. And here's the beauty of it. When you touch reality in this way, even for a moment, everything shifts. Colors seem brighter. Conversations feel deeper. Small moments carry more weight. You are not just rushing from one task to the next, you are present. This presence is not dramatic, but it is powerful. It is the difference between confusion and clarity, between a life wasted and a life lived fully. So how do you practice this? Begin with awareness. Throughout your day, notice when you are lost in thought, caught in stories about the past or worries about the future. Pause and ask, am I watching reflections or am I touching reality? Even this simple question is like stepping behind the mirror for a moment. Over time, those moments grow longer and clarity becomes your natural state. Philosophers and psychologists across the ages all point to the same truth. Mastery of the mind is mastery of life. Stay trapped in reflection, and you remain a prisoner of your own illusions. Step into reality, and you discover freedom. You do not just survive, you live. And when the final moment comes, you will not meet it bewildered, as if waking from a long dream. You will meet it with the quiet strength of someone who has truly been alive. The choice is yours. Shadows or substance, reflection or reality. Once you have glimpsed the difference, the answer becomes clear. The danger of misuse. When people first taste a bit of clarity, something interesting happens. They realize the mind is not fixed, that it can be trained, sharpened, and directed. And with that realization comes a temptation. The temptation to use it as a tool for quick gains. You hear of people trying to manifest money, bend outcomes, or even influence others. It sounds appealing, does it not? To use your newfound mental strength to shape the world exactly as you want it. But here lies the problem. Chasing control before you have built wisdom is dangerous. It is like giving the keys of a race car to a child. The machine is powerful, but without the maturity to handle it, the result is disaster. The Stoics would have warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to keep his intentions pure. He wrote, If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. A disciplined mind is not meant to serve greed or ego. It is meant to guide us toward truth and virtue. When you try to bend life to your desires without first mastering yourself, you end up enslaved by the very mind you thought you were controlling. Carl Jung pointed to a similar danger when he said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Think about that. Instead of using inner strength to turn inward and discover who they are, many use it as a shortcut to escape themselves. They distract themselves with fantasies of wealth, power, or influence, hoping that mastery of the mind will deliver external victories. But true mastery is not about manipulating the outer world. It is about gaining freedom from the illusions inside. If you practice mental discipline only to feed your desires, whether for money, approval, or power, you have not freed yourself at all. You have only polished your chains. The mind becomes sharper, yes, but sharper in service of the very impulses that distort it. That is not wisdom. It is self-deception. Imagine you have been given a lamp that can light up any room. You could use it to illuminate dark corners, to see things as they really are. Or you could turn it into a spotlight for your own performance, blinding others while convincing yourself you are the star of the show. Both use the lamp, but only one brings clarity. The same is true for the mind. A trained mind can light the way to truth, or it can become a tool for manipulation. The difference lies in your intention. Epictetus taught that we must focus on what is within our control and release what is not. He said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When you use mental strength to try and force outcomes, wealth, fame, recognition, you step outside your circle of control. You trade freedom for frustration, because no matter how strong your focus, you cannot command the world to obey. Mastery of the mind is not about bending reality. It is about aligning yourself with it. The one who is free is not the person who gets everything they desire, but the one who is not ruled by desire in the first place. This is why the danger of misuse is so subtle. The mind can become sharp, but sharpness without direction can cut the one who wields it. The Stoics practiced daily not only to strengthen their focus, but to test their intentions, asking, "Am I using this discipline to live in harmony with nature, or to force my own way upon it?" Think of the stories we have seen in history. Leaders who gained great influence but used it for domination. Thinkers who discovered truths but twisted them for personal gain. Every one of them misused their mirror. They learned to direct their minds outward, but never stepped behind it to see who they truly were, and as a result, the very power they developed consumed them. Jung described this in another way. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It is far easier to play with power than to face your own reflection. But that facing, that stepping behind the mirror, is the real purpose of mental discipline. So what does safe practice look like? It looks like humility. It looks like using focus not to manipulate others, but to understand yourself. It looks like training the mind to see clearly, not to escape reality. It means asking, before each practice, am I polishing the mirror to see truth or to feed an illusion? One path brings clarity, the other, confusion. At the heart of Stoicism lies a powerful reminder. Virtue is the only good. Wealth, reputation, pleasure, they are all indifferent. What matters is whether you use your mind in service of wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. The danger of misuse is forgetting this and turning the gift of clarity into another trap of desire. So the warning stands. As you begin to master your mind, resist the urge to use it as a weapon for personal gain. Do not turn discipline into greed or focus into control. Instead, let it guide you deeper, Let it carry you beyond the mirror of thoughts, beyond the parade of reflections, into the stillness of who you really are. Because there, behind the mirror, lies the freedom the Stoics spoke of, the wisdom the philosophers pointed to, and the peace that no amount of external success can ever match. Practical daily practice. The hardest part of any change is not knowing what to do, but actually doing it. We all love the idea of clarity, peace, and control over the mind, but when it comes down to daily practice, we hesitate. Why? Because our minds are clever. They whisper excuses. I'll start tomorrow. I'm too busy. This probably won't make a difference anyway. And yet, as Seneca wisely put it, life is long if you know how to use it. Daily practice is how you learn to use it. Small, consistent steps are what shift you from being ruled by your thoughts to ruling them. So, let us start simply. You do not need special tools or hours of meditation. All you need is your attention. Pick one object around you, a chair, a cup, a bottle, and break it down into its shapes. At first, you will notice the obvious ones, circles, squares, perhaps a few triangles. But stay with it. Soon you will begin to see the subtle interplay of light and shadow, the texture of the surface, the very essence of its form. This is not just an exercise, it is an act of presence. But do not stop there. Keep looking. Push yourself. How many forms can you discover? 20, 50, 100? Suddenly, you will feel your mind stretching. You are exercising your focus, not through force, but by gently training it, much like a muscle. This practice may seem small, but its power is profound, especially because most of us have trained our minds in the very opposite direction. We have taught ourselves to leap endlessly from one thing to another, scrolling, multitasking, perpetually chasing distraction. The result? A restless mind, incapable of holding a thought steady for more than a few seconds. Now, pair this active focus with its counterpart, stillness. Each morning before the world rushes in, give yourself 2 quiet minutes. Simply sit, breathe, and allow your thoughts to rise and fall like waves on the shore. Do not chase them. Do not fight them. Just observe. The goal isn't to silence the mind. It is to learn how to watch it without being swept away by its current. Every time you sit in stillness, you bring more of the unconscious into the light. You begin to notice the patterns you have been repeating. You recognize anxieties that have no real foundation. You see the subtle ways your own mind bends reality. This awareness is the beginning of freedom. Without it, we live as if controlled by fate. With it, we begin to choose our path. And the true beauty of these practices lies in their portability. They can be done anywhere. Waiting for the bus? Break down the street signs into their basic shapes. Sitting in a meeting? Notice the geometry of the room. Stressed in traffic? Breathe and let the thoughts settle instead of chasing them down the road. The world itself becomes your training ground. Every situation is another chance to polish the mirror of your mind. Plato once described philosophy as the turning of the soul toward the light. Each of these small moments is that turning. The results may be subtle at first, but they are life-altering. You will notice that your thoughts no longer control you with the same authority. The same stressful situations will arise, but they will not have the same power to pull you under. Emotions will still swell, but you will be able to hold steady, like a sailor who has finally learned to steer the ship rather than be tossed by the waves. Do not underestimate this simplicity. The mind craves complexity. It seeks dramatic solutions and life-changing breakthroughs. But the truth is, mastery is forged in the quiet crucible of ordinary repetition. 5 minutes of geometric focus, 2 minutes of stillness. Performed every day, these tiny acts reshape the very way your mind reflects reality. Over time, they transform confusion into clarity. They turn scattered thoughts into a grounded presence. And that is how you begin, not just to exist, but to truly live. So the choice is yours. You can continue to let your mind run wild, scattered by every distraction and weighed down by every distorted reflection. Or you can start small. Take one object and break it down into shapes. Sit for 2 minutes tomorrow morning and simply watch your thoughts. This is not about perfection. It is about practice. Because practice is what polishes the mirror. And the clearer the mirror, the clearer your life becomes. In the end, life is not about the endless reflections your mind throws at you. It is about touching reality as it truly is. The clearer your mirror, the clearer your path. Do not let your days slip by in a blur of distortion. Choose to live with presence, strength, and clarity. If this message resonates with you, take the next step. Explore one of the videos waiting for you on the screen and continue to sharpen your mind. And thank you for walking this path with us, for being a part of the Stoic Journal.